It's time we looked at food webs, and in this particular lesson we're going to be looking at how food webs can be broken down into their respective food chains. But before we can begin any of that, we need to look at what a food chain is and review that for a little bit. Let me just get my laser pointer ready. Let's get that set here. So a food chain is nothing more than how energy is passed from one organism to another. So everything has energy, right? That's why we eat. And that energy moves from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, like this diagram here. The ultimate source of energy is going to be the sun, which is not in this food chain here, but the sun is going to give the energy to the plant, which gives it to the grasshopper, to the bird, to the snake, to the owl, and he's on top of the food chain. And over here in this picture we have, again, plants. They always start the energy in the food chain, and the grass gets eaten by the grasshopper, which gets eaten by the mouse, the snake, and the eagle. So this is a slightly different food chain with different organisms. But here the key thing to understand is these arrows and what they indicate. These arrows indicate the direction of energy flow. So the energy starts in the grass and it goes into the grasshopper. That's why the arrow is pointing into the grasshopper. It doesn't go back in reverse. It doesn't go from the grasshopper to the plant. It goes from the plant to the grasshopper. However, you could, and it's not in this food chain, you could have energy go from the grasshopper back into the grass. Do you know how? Think about it. If this grasshopper dies, what happens to it? Organisms will decompose it and then return all of those nutrients back into the soil, and then they're going to go from the soil back into the grass. So you could have things reverse, but that's going to be the job of the decomposers. So again, if this eagle dies, decomposers are going to break him down and put all those nutrients back into the soil, which then the grass will consume, and then the cycle continues. But that's when we're going to go from a food chain to a food web. That's when you get the more complicated connections. However, a food chain is just a simple replication or a simple illustration of what's happening with the energy. That's the food chain's job. It's very simple. It's almost like a chain of events. It's just a linear chain. There's nothing complicated about it. It's almost like a straight line. Whereas a food web is a little bit more complicated. There's multiple food chains connected with one another to make a food web, almost like a spider web. You know how spider webs have so many connections built into it? That's sort of how a food web works. Now, in this particular lesson, like I said, we're going to break down these food webs into food chains. Let's try one. Here's a definition of a food web first. A food web is made up of a group of interconnected food chains. That's how you get a food web. So check this one out here. We got food web number 1. It's a relatively simple food web. We have the grass, goes into the mouse, which goes into the coyote. Or you can have the grass energy going into the mouse, which then gets consumed by the hawk. Or you can have grass goes into the mouse, and that energy goes into the snake, which goes into the hawk. You see how this works here? So here's one food chain. I think we counted them all. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. Here's the third one. So there's 3 food chains in this really simple food web. This is a really simple level kind of question. Let's try the next one here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let you pause the video and then see if you can find all of them. Okay, assuming you pause the video, I'm going to reveal the answers. Check it out. Here's one. That's one food chain. Here's another food chain. There's another one. There's 3 now. We got one more. No, we got more. We got 5 of them. Right. So if you got this one right, let's go to the next one. Otherwise, rewind the tape and try to do it again. Here's a medium level question. How many can you find? Pause the video and see if you could do it. Give it a try. Alright, assuming you did that, let's reveal the answers. Number 1, we start always with grass. Now here's what people mess up with a lot of times. They don't know where to start this food chain, this food web. Where does it all begin? It always begins with the plants. Find them first. So here's 1. Here's 2. There's the third one. Now check it out. Here's the fourth one. It goes up like this. The fifth one, now look, we have grasses. That's one kind of plant, but there's another kind of plant, the water plants. Aquatic means in the water. So these are like the plants that you find in the lakes and the oceans, swamps, you know, those are the aquatic plants. So grasshoppers can eat those too. They don't just eat regular grass, they eat any grass. If it's sticking out of the water, they'll eat it too. Here's another one. Now this one is a little bit trickier because the aquatic plants can also be eaten by the butterflies. And then the arrow goes down here. So the grasshopper eats the butterfly, and then the frog eats the grasshopper, and then the frog gets consumed by the snake, which gets consumed by the hawk. So that's a little bit trickier. How about this one here? Straight up like that, that's another food chain. And the last one, we've got 8. Here's the last one. I hope you got 8, because if you did, you're going to move to the next one, which is very hard. And I'm not going to reveal these ones to you. I'm not going to reveal them to you, but I'm going to say there are 18 of them. There's 18 food chains. You try to find them all. But the trick here, where people are going to get messed up, is that there aren't just grasses. There's also aquatic plants. Okay, we got that, but there's not just these two. There's also terrestrial plants, and they can get eaten by stuff too. Like look at the grasshopper. He eats regular grass. He eats aquatic plants, and he also eats the terrestrial ones. So we've got 3 different kinds that are being consumed by just one animal. Now there's 18 of them. I'm not going to show you the answer, but I will say that's all for this lesson. It's a really short one. And the primary thing you're going to get out of this is that food webs are composed of multiple food chains, and that those food chains are interconnected with one another. Thanks so much guys for your time. I'll talk to you later.